Let's talk about autism. But what if the way we've been taught to understand it has been fundamentally backward this whole time? Today, we are diving into a really powerful concept called veracity. It's part of a new framework created by an autistic person that completely reframes the conversation, starting from the inside out. This single question. This was the central puzzle for Quinn, the creator of this whole framework. He spent literally 40 years trying to solve it for himself. And his journey gives us a whole new way to look at an experience that, for way too long, has only been defined by outsiders. So, to really get this new direction, we have to start by looking at the old map. You know, the models that have historically defined autism, often leaving autistic people feeling, well, broken and completely misunderstood. I mean, just think about that for a second. For decades, the definition of autism wasn't based on the internal lived experience of autistic people at all. Nope. It was built by non-autistic observers who were only focused on the behaviors they could see, not the why behind any of it. And this way of looking at things created what the medical model called the triad of impairment. Just listen to that language: deficits, impairment. This map was never about understanding. It was all about finding problems that needed to be fixed. So you have to ask, what if this map doesn't lead to understanding? What if it's actually a dead end? For so many autistic people, this outside-in view just never matched their inside reality. It just created way more confusion than it ever did clarity. And this is where a new compass comes into the picture. Quinn got so frustrated with that old, broken map that he set out to build a framework that actually made sense from his autistic perspective. And the result, well, it's a fundamental shift in how we see everything. This chart shows that shift perfectly. Look at the language change, from impairment to distinction. The whole focus moves from an external, deficit-based model to one that's all about internal, lived experience. It's reframing autism not as a problem we need to fix, but as a different way of being that we need to understand. Okay, so now we're at the very heart of this new map. Let's dig into its most foundational concept, the first of the three distinctions, which Quinn decided to call veracity. Now, the choice of word here is so deliberate and so key. Quinn chose veracity from the Latin root ver, which means truth. But it's about so much more than just not telling lies. You should think of it as a deep, innate need for the world to be coherent, a drive for information to be accurate, for things to be organized consistently, and for a sense of fundamental fairness. So how does this veracity thing actually show up in real life? Well, it's that profound stress you might feel from a misleading ad or a promise that gets broken. It's the anxiety that spikes when a routine is suddenly disrupted, or that deep frustration when someone messes up your perfectly color-coded system. It's preferring literal, verifiable facts over vague hints. At its very core, it's a powerful drive for the world to just make sense. And right here, this is where things get tricky. How does an intense drive for truth actually work in a world that so often runs on social nuance, on written rules, and, little white lies? This creates a massive paradox. And the friction that this causes, it's not a one-way street. There's a concept called the double empathy problem, which suggests that these communication breakdowns are mutual. It's not one person's fault. It's a fundamental mismatch between two different but totally valid operating systems. You can see the paradox in action right here. An autistic person, driven by veracity, might state a literal truth just to be clear and helpful, but they get perceived as being rude. They might ask for precise details to avoid making a mistake, and they're seen as argumentative. Upholding a rule because it's fair, that can get labeled as rigid. In every single one of these cases, the positive intent gets completely lost in translation, filtered through a totally different operating system. And here it is, the ultimate, painful irony of it all. Research actually shows that this very drive for truth can lead to autistic people being seen as less trustworthy. So why is that? Well, because their communication style, maybe their tone of voice or their body language, it might not match neurotypical expectations of what a truthful person is supposed to look and sound like. So why does having a single word like veracity matter so much? Because for the very first time, it gives a name to a profound, shared, and often really isolating internal experience. I mean, just imagine feeling a constant stress from all the world's inconsistencies, but having no words to explain why. A term like veracity completely shifts that internal story. It goes from, what's wrong with me for being so bothered by this, to, Okay, this is a core part of how I'm wired. This is my need for veracity. It's incredibly validating. This shared language is what builds community. It allows people to connect over this common experience and finally realize they aren't alone. It's such a powerful shift from self-blame to self-understanding, and it creates a sense of belonging for people who may have spent their entire lives feeling like an outsider. All right, finally, let's reframe this entire idea. Because this trait, which can cause so much social friction, is also a significant and often a much needed strength. When we reframe veracity, we start to see its advantages. A deep focus on facts can lead to more logical decisions, free from cognitive bias. A lower sensitivity to social pressure can make someone resistant to groupthink or the bystander effect. And that high value on integrity? Well, that's the exact quality that can empower a whistleblower to call out injustice when they see it. So at the end of the day, veracity is not a social deficit. It's a different cognitive operating system, one that is wired from the ground up to prioritize truth, consistency, and fairness. It's not a bug, it's a core feature of a valid and valuable way of processing the world. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. In our science, our legal systems, our businesses, even in our own personal relationships, what could we achieve if we started to value this intense drive for truth just as much as we value social grace? What would that world look like?